Hello folks, welcome to another Burn Pit podcast video. My name is Steve Frenchick and I'm here in the unfinished homestead in Tucson that I retired to after 28 years in the Army. I made a video last time that talked about souvenirs of service, and what I thought I would do this time was share with you a few of the souvenirs that I picked up. I mean, I've got a ton of them, 28 years obviously. So, but I thought I would break them down into eras as best I can. I went searching through all my boxes. By the way, ignore dogs and chickens and things in the background. Like I said, an unfinished homestead we got going on here. And I'm dirty because I was tearing apart pallets to build flower boxes. In any case, I thought I would break some of my souvenirs down into the era that I collected them up in. Okay, so on this video I'm going to talk about souvenirs that I picked up basically during the first Gulf War. So I deployed to Israel right as the war was about to kick off. And I only spent a couple of weeks in Israel during the Scuds, kind of coming in, and the war ended, and then we sort of packed up our stuff and went home. I didn't need to be there for the whole thing because I was a public affairs goofball, and I just needed to go down there and do some writing and some stories and things like that. And but I was there long enough to pick up some. Well, we took a little trip to Jerusalem. So my first souvenir is from that trip to Jerusalem. Okay, so what we did is I flew into Haifa or Tel Aviv. I can't remember exactly where I flew into. Flew in there, went from between the camps that we had in Haifa and Tel Aviv. And after the war ended, was 100 hours, and then another few days of mopping up, and then the Israeli people were pretty grateful. I was with the air defense people. I was with an air defense unit at the time, 32nd Army Air Defense Command specifically. Man, it's weird how you remember these numbers and unit names sometimes. Sometimes I can't remember the designation of the last unit I was in before I retired, but I still remember, 842 Air Defense Artillery, 442, these names and designations just stick with you. So anyway, after the end of the war, the Israeli people were pretty grateful towards our unit, towards American soldiers. They chartered buses and they let us take tours, and some of the soldiers who were very, who wanted to do it went and got baptized in the Jordan River, things like that. And I went on this tour to Jerusalem and checked out a few things, and I still have this souvenir from that time. And of course, this was the first time I had run across in person this kind of shemag kind of thing. This is what we call it. I'm not sure what the Palestinians, vendor that I bought this from would call it. And it came with this neat little headband thing. You don't see these. So I'm gonna put it on for you folks. So this is the way that I remember them doing it there in my band. There we go. All right, so this is my souvenir from the first Gulf War. That's my souvenir from the first Gulf War, from Israel, from Jerusalem, where we had a good time. We were in uniform during that trip. There were sections of the city we weren't allowed to go into. We weren't allowed to tour. We went to the Palace of David or something like that. We could see the holy sites, but we weren't allowed to really go into the old quarters and visit those sites. the Dome of the Rock and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. People really wanted to do some of that stuff. You know, I mean, I'm 21 or something maybe at the time, too stupid to realize the significance of where I was or what I could see. Hardly knew anything about Jerusalem at the time. Too dumb to appreciate what I was doing, but I'm glad that I went on the trip, because, you know, I look back now and I tell you those memories of just being in the city, and I did have some appreciation for some of the things, like I mean, just the sheer age of the buildings, the stone, and the idea that I was able to put my hands on a wall that had been built thousands of years ago. You know, for a kid from North Dakota, Montana, that's mind-boggling. It really is. Nothing in Montana that was built by us, you know, any older than 100, a couple hundred years, if that. So what used to blow my mind when I was stationed in New Jersey, going to some of the towns that had been there since the 1700s, the 1600s, that blew my mind. Imagine my just awe at being in a area that had been occupied for thousands of years, and still standing buildings that had been there for several thousand years. Okay, anyway, after the Gulf War proper ended in January, I went back to Germany. I was stationed in Germany with this air defense unit. And then I was selected again to deploy to Operation Provide Comfort. And you have to understand that in the starting at that point in the early 90s, we had this whole succession of these operations. Some of them were designated combat operations, some of them were not designated combat operations. So in a note on that 2-3 week deployment that I had to the first Gulf War, I was authorized by my unit to wear a combat patch. And I plan on doing a video to kind of knock out all of these different acronyms and sort of concepts that I'm throwing out there, so I don't have to keep re-explaining what a combat patch is or what an NCO is and things like that for people that aren't veterans or whatever. But a combat patch is we wear our unit insignia, shoulder sleeve insignia, on our left sleeve. That's the unit that you're currently serving with. And on the right sleeve, and of course I'm old, so I'm up here instead of down here, where if you were new in the Army, you of course Velcro it on your sleeve. So, but we used to sew them on. And on your right sleeve, if you wear a unit patch there, that unit patch designates that you were assigned to that unit in combat, or at least in a combat zone. Now, when I went to the Gulf War, it was only a couple of weeks, and I was still around all these guys who had been around in Vietnam or just after Vietnam. And of course, you didn't get a combat patch in Vietnam unless you were really in the shit, apparently. And if you and you had to be there for like 6 months before you were authorized a combat patch. But they wanted us to have combat patches, and so they told us all we could wear this unit insignia as our combat patch, but I didn't. I said, no, I'm not going to put on this combat patch, because I was only there for a couple of weeks, and the worst sort of combat that we were involved in were Scuds coming in, and the potential for chemical weapons. So I didn't wear that combat patch, but when I got sent to Operation Provide Comfort, this, of course, was in northern Iraq. This was a dogs are going to freak out because somebody's driving up our road. Good dogs. This was in northern Iraq, and this was a sort of a refugee rescue mission, kind of, right? Because after the Gulf War, Saddam turned his army against the Kurds in the north, who had, been sort of celebrating and saying, hey, we're going to make an autonomous region up here, because Saddam just got his ass kicked by the coalition. But because we didn't take Saddam out and we left a lot of his army intact, he went north and started hammering the Kurds. Drove a lot of them out of their villages, drove a lot of them into the mountains, And it was January, February, March time frame, and it was cold. People were dying up in the mountains. So we were sent in, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm not mistaken, I was there. It was a coalition fight with the British, the French, the Italians, the Dutch, a couple of other I don't want to say ash and trash. That's just an expression. A couple of other smaller contingents of army units from different small countries. Started an international incident. So this was much more dangerous. Hi, Nikki. That's Nikki back there. This was a much more dangerous mission. There was actual bullets flying in more than a few occasions, and RPGs and things like that. So I was there for 5 months, and for that I came back. I said, "Fuck you! I'm wearing my combat patch for that. Fuck you, Vietnam vets." In any case, these are a couple of the souvenirs that I picked up while I was in northern Iraq and southern Turkey for Operation Provide Comfort. So this is the AK-47 bayonet. Bought this off of... So local kids would come up to us in northern Iraq and go, Mr. And they want to sell us these souvenirs. I always thought this was really cool. It's got the wire cutters on it, right? With the little hole that you stick through this lug and cut wire with that. It's got it's basically just an AK-47 bayonet. They're fairly common now, and I've posted several things. If you're following us on our Facebook page, I've been posting about The Walking Dead, and one of the ladies walking around in there is walking around with an AK bayonet. But it was unusual back then. And one funny thing about these bayonets, right, is that after about 2 months of being in northern Iraq, we pulled out into a camp in southern Turkey. All coalition forces pulled out of northern Iraq, and we were based as a quick reaction force supporting the Kurdish people based in northern Iraq. And the infantry guys, the combat arms guys that had been in as part of the American contingent was the 3rd of the 325th airborne guys out of Vicenza, Italy. They went home, and a battalion of I can't remember who the guy, Berlin Brigade guys came down from Germany and took their places, but they never got into Iraq. Now, as a public affairs guy, I would escort media, and that was my kind of role in Operation Provide Comfort, which was a lot of fun, by the way. And so I would fly down in a helicopter, or sometimes we would drive down in vehicles, and we would cross the border back into Iraq, and we would go escort media around to different places. And we still had checkpoints down there. There were special operations guys down there, and we would take the media down, and they would interview these guys, and then we'd come back. While they're doing the interview, I'm buying bayonets on the side, and I'm taking them back up to the camp in Salopi, and I'm selling them to the Berlin Brigade guys because they never got to go into Iraq, and they never, so they never had a chance to buy any of these bayonets. There was a few of our guys who told this story. Didn't happen to me, about kids coming up to them with RPG rounds and hand grenades, trying to sell them these hand grenades as souvenirs. Now, what did happen to me one time was driving down a road in Iraq, and we see somebody walking on the road. No. First, we're driving down the road, and we see a RPG round laying in the road. And we keep driving for a while, and we see this figure walking up the road in front of us, and he's a Kurdish guy, PKK probably, with a RPG launcher over his back and a friggin' gunny sack full of RPG rounds over his other shoulder, clearly had dropped an RPG round, and didn't even realize it, and was walking up the road. Where the fuck this guy was going, I have no idea. And we slowed down, and we're like, hi. And tried to tell him, you know, hey, he dropped, you know, but I don't know if he got it and went back for it or not. We just got the hell out of there. So that's my AK or my bayonets. I made money off that, and and let me tell you, I was a poor fucking Joe back then, and I needed the money because I used to drink still. Okay, next one. This is an Iraqi Army pistol belt. Let me see if I can get in here to get that focused in on. Focusing? I can't tell. Good. All right, so that's my Iraqi Army pistol belt. You open it on the back by, oh, you just twist. That's right. Some shit. Oh yeah, there we go. All right, so it's cheap plastic junk, right? But I know it's legit. This is not something I bought off eBay to say that I had an Iraqi Army pistol belt. This is shit I bought off a kid in northern Iraq, and there was no eBay back then, so there was no internet at all. So this genuinely came. I don't know. Maybe this was more ceremonial. It really doesn't look like anything that anybody in their right mind would use, but I got to tell you, some of these guys I've seen in these third world armies, man, they got some crap. They got some terrible gear. But in any case, let me go on. This is my emergency drinking water. This is some real shit, right? You open up the top, and that dust inside there is Iraqi dust from 1991. And I guess the idea is that you open this up and there's water inside. I never opened any. There were cases of these, and I grabbed one. It never even occurred to me to open one up. I wasn't as curious back then as I am now. And it feels like when you shake it, like there's a plastic, like the water is inside some kind of plastic or container or something within this metal container. But so this is property U.S. government, 10 ounces emergency drinking water. It's got a mil number, but it doesn't appear to have an NSN. So I don't know, maybe this was common in Vietnam or some kind of stuff, but I have toted this thing around 24 years or something. All of these souvenirs I've toted around for 24 years, but this I usually put on my desk, as a talking point, whatever you want to say. All right, so last one. Okay, this I always thought was super cool. This is there were a lot of coalition forces around. We traded all kinds of stuff, traded gear and things. This is I want to say Romanian rucksack that I traded from one of the coalition forces. It's got these little leather keepers on it for the cinch straps, and it's got one of the coolest closures of any backpack that I've seen, right? So it's got this continuous loop strap. Ignore the chickens. I'm just checking to see if one of my dogs has got an egg. They won't eat the chickens, but they'll go in there and get the eggs. And then the top opens up, and it's basically just a big sack, right? And then you put whatever you want to put in it. Put my souvenirs in here. And then once you get it, everything you want in it, you just hold it like that. Let's see if I even remember how to do this. Oh yeah. And you make a loop. and then you got your straps. So I thought that was a damn. And the funny thing about this cheesy ass backpack is it's got a chest loop, right? Like you're gonna put 50 pounds of gear in this little junky ass rucksack and then use the chest loop. I don't know. I've used it occasionally just for throwing stuff around for travel, you know, stuff like that. But I just thought that was a pretty cool souvenir. Okay, those are my souvenirs from the first sort of war era that I was involved in. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a comment. Come to our Facebook page, Facebook/Burn Pit Talk or the Burn Pit. Can't remember. You can look up the Burn Pit on Facebook. Our Twitter is @BurnPitTalk, and our website is burnpittalk.wordpress.com, where we post blog articles that we write, and we link to our podcast. And you should definitely check out our podcast. It's available on Stitcher, and it's available on iTunes. And you know, when you retire, you can be a chicken farmer. Okay? Thanks for joining me. Hope you join me for my next video, which will be on my time as a cavalry scout in the 90s. Yeah, good times. All right? Thanks.